What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Word on Woodward presented by Rehmann. Empower your purpose with Rehmann. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and turn on your live notifications because I know I'm a forgetful person and you don't want to miss a second of the Word on Woodward every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. We've got some great guests on today's show, you guys. A lot of baseball news, so very baseball heavy today. We've got some great baseball guests, including Dan Petrie. We've got Jim Kalis, and Ron Gardenhire is going to join us later. Of course, we've got Ken Kale for the mailbag, and Nick Katzanika from NHL.com is also going to join us to talk about the upcoming NHL Draft. We don't know exactly when that will be, but the Draft Lottery is going to be tomorrow night, and we're going to do a special edition of the Word on Woodward for you guys starting at 8:30 just after the lottery is announced. But as I said, baseball is back. We've got some big baseball news. So let's get right into the big three. We're going to bring in Art Regner for this. And our first topic, baseball is back. I said that one already. So spring training will start next week for the Tigers. Will be at Comerica Park. It's a really, really exciting time here. We had press conferences with Al Avila, Ron Gardenhire, and Matt Boyd yesterday. They all seemed really optimistic and really excited and talked a lot about the safety procedures that will be in place to make sure the staff and players are all taken care of with COVID-19 and everything else. Art, we've been talking about it for a couple days now, but it's really exciting that next week we are going to have some Tigers baseball. It will just be spring training, but it will be great to see the guys take the field.
Well, yeah, certainly. It seems like we've waited an eternity for this. I mean, hopefully this is the first step to, getting back to the way society used to be before COVID-19. I mean, I'm pretty excited about it. A 60-game schedule. The Tigers are heavy in pitching, and if some of these young arms can come through, and it was interesting. Al Avila yesterday said that they want to protect their pitching. Ron Gardenhire then said, "Well, if they're ready, let's see what they can do." Let's get some of these guys in for an inning or two. And then, of course, Matt Boyd said that they're ready and let's put in the young arms. But there's a couple of things that I like about this new league, this 60-game schedule. Is first that the designated hitter is universal at this point. That means in the National League, you're not going to see the pitcher hit this year. Another interesting concept is a pitcher has to at least pitch face 3 batters minimum before you can take them out unless an inning ends. And then in extra innings, they're going to start with a guy on second base. And if that guy scores, it doesn't go against the pitcher's earned run because they want to speed up the games a little bit. And so I'm excited. But what I'm really excited to see is hopefully this can be pulled off. Everyone is working earnestly to make sure that this happens. But, as we've seen recently, the spikes and everything that's going on, and, you don't know if, what's going to happen. And as I said earlier, and I'm not trying to put a damper on this, but what if a state shuts down and they have a Major League Baseball team and they can't play? So we're a long ways away, I think, but I think we took a gigantic first step in it. I like the rules. I think the Tigers have as good a shot as anybody. I mean, a 60-game schedule, Danielle. I mean, my gosh, if you you go on a 2 or 3 game winning streak, before you know it, you're right in contention. So I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. I'm a little bit cautious just because I think, again, it's kind of out of everyone's control, right? It really is. Let's be honest. Everything's kind of out of our control. What we want and what we may have to end up with might be 2 entirely different things. But I compliment baseball. The Tigers are doing it right. They've got a great plan. It looks like if everything is pulled off, they're going to have a taxi squad that I think will be based in Toledo of 20 guys. So that's Spencer Torkelson and some of the young prospects, because there probably is not going to be a minor league season. So all in all, it was good news. I just hope and pray that it will come off.
We should have a schedule in our hands within the next few days, so that will be cool to see. We know that the Tigers are going to play 40 divisional games, so it'll be with teams in their division, and there will be some crossing there. So it'll be really cool to see how this season plays out. And as you alluded to, this could be really advantageous to the Tigers in the fact that the season is shortened. And we talked about this a lot yesterday, and we actually will ask Ron Gardenhire about it later in the show. But the Tigers have great pitching. That's their strength right now. So that could really give them even more of an advantage heading into a short season.
Well, without question. I mean, I think everybody's in agreement. Pitching is always ahead of hitting. The pitchers can throw. They can go out there and throw, 100 times, 100 pitches a day and work on stuff and work on mechanics. I think it's really tough for a hitter on his own, even if he has a batting cage and he's not facing live pitching, I guess is what I'm getting towards. So I think it's going to take those guys a while to get their timing down. And I think that's a distinct advantage. The Tigers can get out of the gate hot, and if you look at it, Boyd, Zimmerman, and don't forget Michael Fulmer's coming back. So they have a great opportunity here. And I know Ron Gardenhire is planning on using a 5-man rotation. Their 5-man rotation is pretty good. So if you look at it from that way, why not the Tigers? I mean, it's open season. I mean, it would be weird, I guess, if you look at, 2020 World Series champ, Detroit Tigers, and, you're sitting there going, what 20? What? I mean, they lost 114 games in 2019. Well, hey, welcome to our world 2020, right? So it could happen. It could definitely happen. I think the Tigers are in a good shape. And I think with pitching as a strength, and pitching is going to be the dominant thing when baseball comes back, and it usually is, but I mean, especially in a 60-game season, I think the Tigers are in a good position.
Aside from pitching art, we get to see Jonathan Scope and CJ Cron in Tigers uniforms finally. I know people were really excited to see them, especially after spring training part 1, I guess we can call it. So spring training part 1, Miguel Cabrera also looked really good, which is very encouraging for the Tigers, because if he can come back as healthy as ever, the Tigers are in an even better spot.
Well, certainly. I think Cabrera is the key. He is the premier hitter of his generation, or certainly one of. I mean, he's already in the Hall of Fame. I think we know that. He already has those credentials. So with that said, I think if Miggy is in shape, and he is, and he can hit. He may not have the power that he once did, but he's still one of the premier players in baseball. If he can anchor that lineup, which really will take some of the pressure off everybody else, if Miggy's able to kind of carry the team from a hitting standpoint. I mean, there's going to be a lot of 3-2, 2-1 games. I don't see a whole lot of runs being scored, at least early on through the first 10 to 15 games. Then maybe it'll pick up a little bit. But, when you have a guy like Cabrera in the lineup who knows how to hit, is a spray hitter, can hit for power. I don't think all his power is gone like some people believe. And then you throw Scope and Cron into the mix. I mean, they're the Tigers have a nice thing going here. I mean, they really, really do. And don't forget, I said, a guy like Candelario, I mean, with all, he's going to have to prove himself now. I mean, this is, he came in when he was traded for, he was, one of these blue chip guys, and it hasn't worked out for him. I don't know why. I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest mysteries, but, this is his opportunity right now. Paredes, I know he's a little bit younger. I mean, some of these guys, they got to take this, the bull by the horns, the old expression is, and really run with it. So there's a lot at stake for some of these Tiger players, especially with the way they've drafted the last couple of years with positional players. And, Torkelson is the Torque Man's knocking on the door. And Riley Green probably isn't that far behind. So, there's going to be a lot going on. It's going to be fascinating. If I could describe it in one word about this upcoming baseball season for the Tigers, I think it's fascinating. Fascinating, especially if Gardy gets his way, if Ron Gardenhire gets his way, and we see some of these young arms up here in Detroit too, and maybe Double D, keep saying the Torque Man's going to be up here, so that would be great too.
We know Double D knows everything, so we're definitely banking on that one. But we will talk a lot more baseball. So I promise you guys, we've got some great guests to talk about the Tigers being back and everything that comes with the return. So let's move on to our second topic of the big three for right now, and it is The Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2020. It was announced last night. And Art, the two biggest names that we're going to focus on from this list are Marian Hossa and Ken Holland, former Red Wings general manager, announced in the builder category. And Art, I know everyone talks about Ken Holland and always has talked about Ken Holland as a future Hall of Famer. There was no doubt about that. But were you surprised to see him on the ballot there for 2020?
Well, I don't want to get into it too much, but now that he's in Edmonton, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. His first year as part of the Oiler entourage. Yeah, I am surprised. I don't think there's anybody. When we're sitting here discussing it, Kenny Daniels, who we had on Tuesday's show, we were talking off the air about certain guys, and we're thinking builders, and we neglected to say Red Berenson. Red Berenson should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, all his career was done in the United States. I know he played for Montreal and won a cup with them right after he got out of the University of Michigan. They held his rights and all that. But yeah, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised he's in the Hall of Fame. I'm surprised at the timing of it. I think Ken himself was probably surprised. I mean, we always assumed when we would talk about him, or in circles, in media circles, or with players or something, it was a given. So yeah, future Hall of Famer for sure. I mean, Ken has done a lot of great things. I was really, really surprised, and and in the announcement yesterday, I was watching it live on NHL Network. He was the first guy they announced. It's like, and Lanny McDonald, I think he didn't even, usually he builds it up, born in Burnaby, BC or whatever. But it was like, he came right out and said, Ken Holland has been, and boom. And I think I texted you right away and I said, Holland. We were all a little bit surprised by the timing. He's well deserved. He's one of the, the greatest executives in NHL history. He himself will admit, and he has said it on the Red and White Authority podcast when Edmonton was in here last year in October, that he's really disappointed and he's really apologetic about the way the Red Wings are right now. But when you qualify for the playoffs 25 consecutive seasons, sooner or later you're going to take a hit. But I think Ken, feels, he's told me so many times he feels really, really bad about it. And then you go to Marian Hossa, and, he only played 1 year for the Red Wings. But I know to a man that played with him as a Red Wing, and they came within one game of winning the Stanley Cup in 2009, think just the world of him. I know the Red Wing organization, Jimmy Devellano, Ken Holland, they just thought that he was, not only a great player, which he is, obviously he's in the Hall of Fame, but just a great person. And so I'm not surprised by that. Hossa, and I know Red Wing fans have been disappointed for years that they couldn't work out a deal. And, he never really wanted to leave Detroit. Detroit just didn't want him to leave. They thought they were close. There's all kinds of speculation. Well, did they choose Franson over Hossa or whatever happened? But in the end, it just didn't work out. But it wasn't for a lack of trying by both sides. So congratulations to Marian Hossa. Of course, Jarome Iginla. What can you say about him when you really look at the class? Kevin Lowe, who I already thought was in, and Doug Wilson, who I already thought was in, both of them getting in there too. And then Kim St. Pierre is perhaps the greatest female goaltender of all time, or certainly one of them. She's won, I think, 3 gold medals with Team Canada. So it's a really, really impressive class. And when you have Jarome Iginla, Marian Hossa, Kevin Lowe, Doug Wilson, Kim St. Pierre, and then finishing it off in the builders category with Ken Holland, hopefully that ceremony will take place in mid-November, and we'll get to see Ken's speech because, I'm sure that, I'm sure he'll at least thank you in his speech, Daniela, but when he's inducted into the Hall of Fame officially. But, that was just good. Good news, surprising news, not unexpected that he's in, unexpected at the timing of the announcement that he was in. I don't think nobody was speculating Ken Holland was going to be announced yesterday for the 2020 class of the Hockey Hall of Fame, but he was. It's deserved. Congratulations, Ken. Congratulations, Hossa. And Jarome, and I love Jarome Iginla. So Jarome.
To the entire class, Art, right? The entire 2020
Yeah, really. Yeah,
class,
there you go. Right. It's quite an accomplishment.
That's a big deal.
Whether you have Detroit. Right. Whether you have Detroit ties or not, way to go.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Great work. Great work. Let's move on to
Yeah,
our
hey,
third topic of
I,
today's three. It's a Tiger's dream come true. We've had these on our show a few times. The Tigers do so much for the community and for their fans. This one is led by Dan Dickerson and Ron Gardenhire.
Well, the Tigers Dreams Come True program has been creating memorable experiences for Tigers fans for a long, long time. Joining us today as part of this program is Rick Mason of Oxford, Michigan. It's fun to be able to talk to fans during this time. So, Rick, we appreciate your time.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Your nephew, Joe Backus, said you instilled the love of baseball into him. And I think that is such a, that's what we love about the game, isn't it? How it gets passed on from generation to generation.
Joe was always my little buddy. He was my first nephew, always playing catch, always at his ball games. We've done a lot of games together. We're always talking baseball.
And I understand you shared an experience together in 2006, batting practice at Comerica Park. But before you tell that story, I'd like to bring in somebody that you might know, and you can tell it to him and talk a little baseball. Tigers manager Ron Gardenhire is joining us to say hello.
Hi, Gary. How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
You look like you're in shape for the season.
I got a tan. That's all I know.
Hey, I take that.
I've been looking at some of these stories and playing a little baseball with Rosema. That's pretty good.
Joe, my nephew, said, hey, I got a special treat. We're going to go down to a batting practice at Comerica. And the first guy I'm going to hit is Rosie. But yeah, I got to hit off Dave, and it was kind of fun. I'm glad he wasn't too tough on me.
I've been involved with ALS for probably 20 years now. We do a snowmobile ride every year at the end of the season. We've raised over $1 million each year for the past 3 years.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Called the Blackwoods Blizzard Tour.
I admire you for that. I admire you for what you do for a living here in Detroit. I was ecstatic to hear that you were coming here.
You know what? My wife and I love it. We love Detroit. We've had a blast there. Honestly, in spring training, I was really excited. Some of those young kids have stepped up now. They got a little bit better understanding. So I think we're going to have some fun this year if we can get back on that diamond.
I take a lot of fun out of watching young players develop. That was my joy watching the '84 Tigers.
Well, you know what? Hopefully we will get back, and we'll get back to playing ball. And you and Joe are going to have to come down. Let me drag you down to the ballpark and let you check it out.
Oh,
maybe
definitely.
Get you to throw a pitch to Cabrera.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
We'll make it happen once we get
All
there.
right, fabulous.
That'd be fun.
I'd love it, Ryan.
I can't help but get emotional every time we watch one of these. Dan and Ron did such a great job in that Dreams Come True. The fans were so excited. It's incredible, Art. Every time we have these on, it really does leave me speechless. I really don't know how to find the words to describe what they do for the fans and what the fans really mean to this organization.
Well, the thing that I've always liked about these is that the Tigers do such a great job where it's the whole spectrum of their fan base too. And it's men, it's women, it's children, it's teenagers, it's middle-aged guys, it's elderly people. I mean, and I think you put it so eloquently right there, Danielle. It's the whole fan base. What they do, they recognize. I keep telling this, maybe ad nauseum now, but the team's charter member of the American League's been around since 1901. They've essentially worn the same uniform, or the Old English D has been around since 1901. There is a tradition, there is a history. Carrying it off to his nephew, who's now a big baseball fan because of him. I just think it's great, and what I like about this series that the Tigers are doing is that we sometimes, not that we put athletes on a pedestal, but we get kind of nervous or shake around them, or you see somebody that you admire or you see on television in a uniform performing a game, but it really does bring across that human side. We're all in this together. We're just people, and the interaction is suddenly, you might be a little apprehensive, or my gosh, I'm talking to so and so. I'm talking to a tiger, but after a few questions, then you're just talking. You're just relating as a human being, and I think they do a wonderful job. I think this is a wonderful series, and I don't know if baseball gives out awards for something like that, but certainly the Tigers have to be in contention. I don't think it gets much better than that.
Definitely. Ron Gardenhire doing so much, and now he's even busier with the return of a baseball season. So we'll talk to him later in the show, as mentioned, and that wraps up our big three for today, you guys. Thank you to Chevrolet for presenting the big three this week and every week right here on the Word on Woodward. Chevy cares. That is why Chevy Clean dealers are committed to using enhanced vehicle cleaning measures with CDC-approved cleansers before delivering your vehicle after purchase or service. So when you're ready, you can find new roads with confidence. It's time for us to get into the mailbag now, and we're going to bring back one of our favorite guests to have on the show, Ken Kale, your Red Wings radio play-by-play announcer. Ken, how you doing?
Doing really good. I'm surprised to hear that baseball's coming back, but I'm looking forward to it. And it kind of reminds me of the old 95 hockey season when they played, 41 games, something like that. And every game means something. So I think it's going to be exciting. And, Art was mentioning the pitching, and I think that's a huge advantage. If some of these young arms can come through along with the veterans, Tigers got a good chance to make the playoffs, I think.
I agree with you fully, Ken. You and Art, really. And I want to ask you, too, about the Hall of Fame. Art and I talked about that in our Big Three segment. Ken Holland and Marian Hossa, both 2020 inductees into the Hall of Fame. I'm sure you have some great memories of both of those guys.
Well, Ken Holland, obviously, has been around for such a long time in the Detroit organization, now with the Edmonton Oilers. And he started out from the bottom and worked his way up to the top. And it seemed like every time he had an opportunity, he took advantage of it and became the all-time winningest general manager in Detroit Red Wings hockey history. So, winning all those Stanley Cups, being part of a lot of great teams, especially that 2002 team that was just had all those Hall of Famers on it. Well-deserved for Kenny Holland. And, I'm really happy for him. He's a great guy. He was a great guy to be around on the bus at the arenas. And Art can attest to this. Sometimes when you want to talk to Ken for 5 minutes, it goes on for an hour and a half. But I'll tell you what, you learn a lot just by talking to Ken Holland. And Marian Hossa, he only played 1 year for the Red Wings. He scored 40 goals, was terrific that season. And a lot of fans didn't know this, but he actually was playing with a bad shoulder, in the playoffs. So if he was 100% healthy, who knows, what the Red Wings would have done in the year he was with Detroit. But on a personal note for Marian Hossa, I called my 1,000th career game, and Hossa actually scored the game-winning goal, and he gave me the puck. So I got that in my basement on a shelf, so that's pretty nice of him. But well-deserved.
That's a great memory, Ken, and that actually leads us right into our first mailbag question. So let's get right into it. This one is Phil from Essex, and he asks you, Ken, who was the biggest surprise to get into the Hall of Fame this year?
You know what? That's a good question, and I'm not so sure that I have a surprise, because I think everyone in this year's class that was elected is well-deserved. I guess the biggest surprise to me is the fact that there are three people that should be in that aren't in, and two of them are Red Wings: Curtis Joseph, Chris Osgood, and actually Pat Verbeek, 3 Red Wings. So those are 3 guys that I really want to see in the Hall of Fame. That's the surprise to me. I mean, when you look at goaltending, think about this, guys. Out of all the goaltenders that have ever played in the National Hockey League, and there's been thousands of them, only 13 goaltenders have won 400 or more games. Curtis Joseph won 450 games or something like that. Chris Osgood, 401 games. They should be in the Hall of Fame. Think about it. Those are a lot of wins. Now, a lot of people say, well, Curtis Joseph played on a team that really never won a Stanley Cup. Wasn't on. Well, that just proves the point. You have 450 wins, and you're not on a very good team. That tells you that you're a winning goaltender. Then they'll look at Chris Osgood and say, well, he had a good team in front of him all the time. So those are 2 goaltenders I think should be. That's the big surprise. And also Red Wings assistant general manager Pat Verbeek. This guy scored 500 goals, over 1,000 points, was nasty in front of the net. he deserves to be in too. There are certain numbers, in my opinion, that should automatically put you in the Hall of Fame. If you're a goal scorer and you score 500 goals in the National Hockey League, you should be in. If you're a goaltender and you have more than 400 wins, you should be in. So those three players, to me, are the surprise. As for this year's class, I think well-deserved. They all deserve to be in.
Art, I know that you are a big fan of Chris Osgood and really want to see him in the Hall of Fame. We had him on a few weeks ago, and one thing about him that really makes the case to get him in is his playoff numbers, especially in 08 and 09.
Well, certainly, Chris Osgood had to reinvent himself in order to stay in the league. And I think Ken would be in agreement. If they win 2009, I think two things happen. Chris Osgood is in the Hall of Fame. He wins the Conn Smythe if they win Game 7 at Joe Louis Arena against Pittsburgh. And Marian Hossa might have stuck around and been a Red Wing and maybe won more cups with Detroit, not going to Chicago, where it turned out well for him. He won 3. So, I think Chris Osgood is caught in that gray area where if you look at his regular season statistics, even though he won 400 games, they're good. They're not great. They don't blow you away. But when you throw in the playoffs, when it really counts, and you look what he was able to do late in his career and the way he turned his game around, he's certainly a Hall of Famer. Ken Dryden played, 9 years or something in the NHL and won, I think, 7 Stanley Cups. And everyone thinks he's a great goalie. Ken Dryden will say, I played on perhaps the greatest teams in hockey history, those 70s Canadiens teams. I mean, Ken Caller, Art Regner could have been in net and they would have won, I mean, so you really got to look, you really have to look at it. Yeah, I'll give myself a little, yeah, sure, Art. Yeah, sure you could have done it. But yeah, but I look at it from that aspect. I think Ozzy is a victim of the teams that he played. I think if he were on a Canadian franchise for most of his career, which is why I'm kind of weird. I find it odd that Joseph, maybe because he didn't win a Stanley Cup, why he isn't in, because, he was a Leaf. He was a Leaf. He should be in. I mean, every Leaf should be in, whether you play 1 game or 1,000 games. If you played for the Leafs, you're a Hockey Hall of Famer. But, aside from that, I would say this is that, Joseph's numbers, 400, he's kind of like, and this is, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's kind of like Wayne Fontes is the winningest and losingest coach in Detroit Lions history. He's won more games and he's lost more games. Curtis Joseph is won more games and probably lost more games than a guy who's won, over 400 games. So what I'm saying is when you look at it in its totality, I think that's what hurts Cujo is he didn't play on great teams, which really solidifies Ken's point. He won 454 games, and he wasn't on very good teams. Roberto Luongo is kind of in the same boat. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, as he should be. So, I mean, it's crazy. It's subjective. Eventually Ozzy will get in. Hey, if Rogie Vachon can get in, who can, correct me if I was wrong, was blind in one eye by the time the Red Wings got him, to play here from the Kings, if he can eventually get in, then, I think someday Ozzy will get in. And I think as Ozzy would probably say, hopefully, his memory won't be shot to a point where he'll actually remember getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Art, the next question for you is a baseball question. So let's get to question number 2. This one is Bill from Canton. With the new baseball schedule, the Tigers are going to see a lot of the NL Central. That's the second most that they'll see next to the AL Central, their own division. Are you most excited to see the Cubs, Cardinals, Brewers, Reds, or Pirates?
Well, I'm not excited to see the Pirates, just because they're their National League crossover rival. So no matter whom the Tigers are playing from the National League, they're always going to play the Pirates every season. So, so I've had enough of the Pirates. And the Cardinals are a longtime World Series rival, and they're great. And I love their uniform, I really do. And And, and I guess you could say the Cubs because of Chicago and the Detroit-Chicago rivalry. And then the Brewers were in the Tigers division many, many years ago before they went, they switched leagues and went to the National League. But the team that I really have always enjoyed seeing, and I know Ken will remember this, as I like to call them, the Cincinnati Redlegs. I definitely like Cincinnati because years ago, to benefit Sandlot baseball in the cities of Detroit and Cincinnati, the Tigers would play an annual exhibition game right around the All-Star break against the Cincinnati Reds. And this just wasn't the Cincinnati Redlegs of old. These were the Redlegs of great teams. Sparky Anderson, I think, was the manager. It was Johnny Bench. You talk about Joe Morgan. I mean, this was the big red machine. And I really, really always as a little kid really looked forward to them playing Cincinnati in that exhibition game that benefited Sandlot baseball. So I really like the Cincinnati Reds. And let's be honest, anytime you can beat a team from Ohio, that's a good thing. So it's Cincinnati.
I knew you were going to get some kind of Ohio hate into that answer, Art. I just knew it.
Yep.
All right, Ken, next question is for you, and it is Red Wings related. I really like this question. I'm interested to see what you think about this. This one is Mark from Dearborn. Do you think the next Wings goalie to lead the team to the playoffs is already in the system, or do you think this will be someone that they sign as a free agent?
Wow, that's a real tough question from Mark from Dearborn. And, if you look at the Red Wings rebuild right now, you'd have to look at it might take a couple of more years for the Red Wings to make the playoffs. But then again, you never know what's going to happen down the line in the future. Suppose the league only plays a 40 or 50 game schedule coming up. And if teams get hot, you never know. And you get a hot goaltender, it could happen quickly. So I don't know. I kind of like the way Jonathan Bernier was playing in goal. This is the final year of his contract next season coming up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him after this next season. But I would have to say, just off the top of my head, that first of all, the Red Wings, I don't believe in the next 2 or 3 years going to have a goaltender in their system that's going to come up and dominate and take them to the promised land. That's going to take some time. So I would have to say to Mark and Dearborn that the Red Wings' next goaltender is going to take them to the playoffs would probably be via a trade route or in free agency. But nothing bad against Jonathan Bernier because I really like the way he played. And maybe if he gets hot and the team can play well defensively in front of him, you never know what could happen. But that's a good question. It's a tough question to answer.
It is, Ken, and we're going to stay on hockey for our last question. Art, I want you to answer this one first, and Ken, then you. We all know that tomorrow is the day. It's the draft lottery, the NHL Draft Lottery, and the Red Wings have the best odds of getting that number 1 pick, which we are hoping for. Mike from Birmingham wants to know, if all the good luck charms helped baseball come back, what last-second prep can I do for the draft lottery? Art, I feel like I already know your answer, but go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, if you don't have a pair yet, you have to be wearing red underwear tomorrow. It is essential. I would loan you another pair, but underwear is something that we don't share. But I also think the one that I really like, and if I didn't think I'd get arrested, I would have done it by now. Is I like breaking plates and throwing them on your neighbor's porch. So if you want, which is some sort of tradition, good luck tradition in China. It's bizarre and it's weird, but I would do that. So red underwear, essential. You have to be wearing red underwear. And if you really want to make sure that the Red Wings get that number 1 pick when the lottery is announced tomorrow, sometime between 8 and 8:30 Eastern Daylight Time, I would say that break the plates. If you have some dishes or, you want to get your significant other all riled up or something, take their favorite plate, bust it up and throw it on your neighbor's porch. You might get a divorce or something, but hey, it's worth it if the Red Wings get the number 1 pick.
I don't know if that's the best advice, Art. Maybe not her favorite plate, a plate, but maybe not the favorite plate. I just think I'm going to wear my pajamas inside out for that. It worked.
What are those plates called? The decorative plates. I forget what they are, but they're of like the Campbell Soup Kids, or there's a whole like the presidents of the United States. They're collector's plates. I forget. There's a distinct name. I'm sure one of the audience will probably, or someone will text me it. But yeah, take one of those collector's plates, bust those up, and then throw them on your neighbor's porch.
What, like the fine china? Is that what you're talking about? Like from the
Yeah,
ones that everyone displays?
I don't know. Yeah, but there's a distinct. I don't know what they're called. I mean, I do know, but I can't recall it right now off the top of my head. But there are these. It's a series of plates that if you're into plates, these are the plates that you have to have. Break those, and the Red Wings will get the number 1 pick tomorrow.
Right, well,
you
you
have
think
to
about
throw them
the
on
name
your
of those
neighbor's
plates.
porch.
Ken,
All right.
what is your good luck ritual that you're going to do tonight?
You know what? All I can think of is somebody's going to raid a china cabinet before tomorrow night, and they're some kid's going to go in there and grab those plates. Art, you're in trouble.
Art,
Hey, Ken, you just said that it's going to happen. So, I throw all the blame on you.
Well, I remember Jimmy Devellano, every time the draft would come up, and the Red Wings would have a top pick. This was back in the day. He'd say, cross your fingers, cross your toes, say a prayer, and really hope that you can get a high pick and a good player out of the draft. But I believe in divine intervention. So I would say to all the people, before you say your prayers at night, get down on your knees, look upstairs and say, God, please. The Red Wings over the last 3 years, they've shuffled back in the draft. This year, please let them have the number 1 pick. So that's what I would do.
I like that, Ken. And just a reminder, the Red Wings can only pick, the worst pick they could have is 4. So they're going to get a good player here, but we really want them to get that number 1. Art already has the C on Alexis Lafreniere, so that better happen.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Hey, Dylan, I've been pushing for you for a couple of years now, but once Lafreniere gets here, I'm sure Steve's going to say, look, I was the youngest serving captain and the longest serving captain in NHL history. Someone has to break this record. Lafreniere, you're the captain.
Well, guys, do your good luck dances, your rituals, whatever you have to do tonight. And tomorrow, after the draft lottery, make sure that you tune into our special edition of The Word on Woodward. You may even hear from Steve Yzerman himself, and we are going to have Art and Ken joining it too. Carly will be a part of it as well. So again, that's tomorrow night at 8:30, directly following the draft lottery. Thanks to Ken for joining us. And of course, thank you to Little Caesars for delivering the mailbag right here on The Word on Woodward. Little Caesars proudly introduces their hot and ready pepperoni cheeser. You get a large pizza topped with classic pepperoni, fresh mozzarella, a toasted Parmesan, and Asiago cheese crust for just $7. Try our no-contact pizza portal or delivery from Little Caesars. We've still got a lot to go in today's Word on Woodward, you guys. We are going to be joined by Ron Gardenhire later in the show. We're going to hear from Jim Kalis talking about the Tigers 2020 draft class. And right now, we're going to catch up with Carly, who has a very special guest.
That's right. It's time for Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Today, I'm joined by Fox Sports Detroit Tigers analyst and former Tigers pitcher, Dan Petrie. How's it going, Dan?
Everything's good, Carly. It's nice to be with you. And we're going to have some fun talking about baseball. And thank goodness they got it all figured out, and excited for the season to get started.
That's right. And as you were just mentioning, we just found out baseball is back. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I mean, it's been a long 3 months. I also coach high school baseball, which we all know high school sports and college sports were canceled. So that was a big blow. And then, not being able to, I just arrived home from spring training, doing a couple games down there, and I was all fired up for this season. And then 2 days later, it came crashing to a halt. And it was like, no, this isn't happening. And okay, it'll be for a week, and here, 3 months. And then it was, the virus, and then it was a labor situation, and are they really going to get this thing done? And they've got to get this thing done. There's just no way they can go 18 months without playing. So there was so many roller coaster of emotions, and I think for everybody, and I think fans wanted, especially here in Detroit, even though they can't go to Comerica right away, I think they're going to really embrace having the games back on television.
Absolutely. And so can you tell us and expand a little bit on the abbreviated 60-game return?
Boy, it's going to be interesting for so many different reasons, but they talk about 162 games being a marathon, and this 60-game schedule is going to be a sprint, so each game is just going to be, the magnitude of importance is going to be so high, how you're going to have to get off to a good start, and just the differences between managing and the rosters, and also what's it going to be like for the players, playing without fans, not being able to shake hands, not being able to high five. Somebody hits a walk-off home run, they throw the Gatorade on them. You can't do that. I mean, so there's going to be a lot of the season will be exciting, but it's going to be very interesting to see how the social distancing and all of those type of things, and how they deal with the virus, how that plays into the game. That's going to be a whole nother component, which players, managers, and management have never been through.
Right. And let me ask you something. This is one thing I thought about with the abbreviated season. How will a shortened season affect the development of players?
And you're right to think that way. And I think that's another reason why the Tigers might be very, very, have a chance and be very good, because they're going to be hungry. There's a lot of people that are on one-year deals that have a lot to play for, and they're going to be free agents at the end of the year. And, they're going to want to have a good 60 games so they can get a nice contract, whether it be with the Tigers or some other team next year. But the development, it was so important to get this season without minor leagues. I mean, the Tigers are in a rebuild, and they've got the pitchers that we keep hearing about: Manning, Mize, Skubal, Faedo, and then hopefully Spencer Torkelson gets signed, and Riley Green. And for them to go 18 months without playing baseball was going to be very detrimental, in my opinion, for their development. It could put them back another year. So I think it's very important that those guys do get some good quality at bats, some good solid innings. Whether or not we see them up in the big leagues this year remains a question, but they need this opportunity to get some good innings in, good at bats, and even go into an instructional league or an Arizona fall league to continue that development, to hopefully get ready for next year, where they can be a key member of the squad in 2021.
Okay, and you touched on this just a bit. How will this affect prospects and some of these draft picks that we have?
Well, again, I assume that they're going to sign Spencer Torkelson. They did announce, I guess, that they signed Daniel Cabrera. So the only one that they're still waiting on is Torkelson. So he's gonna want to get at it. And Riley Green, who knows when he's going to be up, but there's a number of different players down in the minor league system that are just starting to turn the corner. A guy like Derek Hill, who was a #1 pick, Daz Cameron. I mean, there's a lot of them down there that really, hopefully will find their way onto that 60-man roster and the taxi squad, so they will be able to continue their development against some of, even though it's inter-squad games, it's still some of the best prospects and the best baseball players that the Tigers have. So that should, even though it's not live game competition, but it should be okay for their development because of the level of competition they'll be going up against.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then with training camp, it's slated to begin July 1st at Comerica Park. Different kind of feel, of course, obviously with the virus, but also with it being home. How will that differ from training camp in Lakeland?
There's another good point right there. They're used to being down in a totally different atmosphere down in Florida. It's nice and relaxed, and you got the the warm, it's in the winter time and the warm air and the palm trees and everything. But, a guy like Matthew Boyd, who is just wonderful to talk to. He's very smart. He's the player rep for the Tigers. He was talking about, man, this has been great. I'm right here at home. I have a home here in Detroit, and I've been able to go to the ballpark and work out. So I think it's going to be nice for him, just because, he's right here in town and several other Tigers will be here. But, assembling everybody from all over the world now, there's that aspect too. You got to get people from all the Caribbean countries, and Latin America, and get them up here to Comerica. So there's a lot of differences that they've never had to deal with. And it's going to be interesting how they handle all those visas and streamlining and speeding that up, because there's no time to waste, because they've only got a couple of weeks to get ready, and then you want to be hitting the ground running when that season starts.
Exactly. And then what are some of the precautions that the MLB are taking to make sure the players stay safe?
Boy, there's a lot, and I thought it was like 67 pages, but I think I saw yesterday where it was 100 pages now, and again, I think they're working through all of that. Like Ron Gardenhire was on this morning, and he's kind of an at-risk guy, and he says he might have to sit in the dugout with a mask on, and he's not sure if he's allowed to go out and make a pitching change. You usually walk out to the mound and take the ball from the starter, or does he just motion, and, talking about, pitchers, they're used to they go to their mouth, to get moisture, to get help in their grip and everything. And that's no longer allowed. And it's a habit. And they're talking about having a wet cloth putting in their, in their pocket. Batting practice baseballs, they use them one day and then they have to disinfect them, and they can't use them again for 5 days. I mean, this list is really, really long, and I'm not sure how anybody's going to know exactly all of the different rules there. But, the biggest thing is the player's safety, and the staff. And so they're going to really, really watch it. And, Matthew Boyd again, is talking about, he doesn't want to go down to the stadium and catch or be infected and bring the virus home to his family. So they're going to be very, very careful about, how they operate and what they do at the ballpark.
What can fans expect to see from this team in this upcoming season?
Well, I was able to talk to Ron Gardenhire too in spring training, and if you're a player or your manager, coach, you have a lot of pride and as a baseball player, and you don't want to hear that you stink, and that's what people say, and you get tired of hearing it. And I remember telling Gardy, I said, I don't want to hear it. Me as a, doing the game, I don't want to hear what people say that the Tigers stink. I don't think so. I mean, I see how hard those guys work, and I see how hungry they are. I see how hard Ron Gardenhire works and his coaching staff. And for people just to say that about this ball club would anger me, and I'd be going out to show them, well, I'll show you. You think we stink, huh? Okay, well, yeah, we'll take care of it on the field. That's why I think it's going to be so exciting, is because of the pride that these players and coaches have, and especially over a 60-game season, they're going to be very hungry going out.
How do you think the Tigers' record will differ with all these rules and this different play that they have coming into this season?
I think health is going to play such an important role, and it's a big question mark that we're not going to know. Our pitcher's arm's going to get sore. We'll find out who really took good care of themselves. When the season starts up, will there be some muscle tweaks? How about if you go through a situation where all of a sudden your 3, 4, 5, and 6 hitter test positive? What happens if out of your 5 starting pitchers test positive, so there's so many question marks that I think are going to play out, and that's why it's the biggest thing is just to watch that health and be overly cautious about how you treat the players and how you watch this spread of this disease.
I'm excited baseball is back, and I can't thank you enough for being on Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Daniela, back to you.
Thank you, Carly. Always great to hear from Dan. He had a lot of great things to say about the return of baseball, and Carly is going to be a huge part of our Bet You Didn't Know presented by Motor City Casino Hotel today. She's the only one that really knows exactly what's going on. So, Carly, I'm putting my trust in you to not make me look dumb today.
Uh-oh, Daniela, that's a little heavy weight to put on my shoulders. I'm just kidding. All right, so today on Bet You Didn't Know, we're going to be playing some word association. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you guys a few Red Wings players, former and current, and I want you to tell me a story associated with some player, okay? So first we'll start with Daniela. Your player is Anthony Mantha, known to Art as BT Express. So what's a good story
you just took my word
about Anthony?
It was BT Express. Because honestly, I feel bad for Anthony Mantha right now, because the first thing that came to my mind when you said Anthony Mantha was the story that Art told last week on the Word on Woodward when we had Dan Manis on, who produced the Wing Wheel. He told the story of when he stayed with Art on a road trip. And Art was so loud, all of a sudden they had a knock on their hotel room, which it was one of those like adjoining doors that connects the room. He had a knock on it, and they opened the door, and it was Anthony Mantha telling Art to shut up. And I bet you
don't think that's
he used more colorful language. I seriously, like I said, Anthony Mantha, great hockey player, great guy, and the first thing I thought of was Art's story.
Love it.
Well, it's true. He did do that.
That he did. I've heard that story from you and Dan. Okay, well, Art, your player is Yuri Fisher. How about that?
Well, I love Yuri Fisher, obviously. His career was cut short because of his heart issues. In the 2002 playoffs, I believe it was in Game 4 in Carolina. I think it was Jacob Voracek. He cross-checked him to the face. It was a really mean hit. Yuri did it, and he was thrown out of the game. And, I can remember the cameras like focusing in on him. I mean, I was at the game, but, Yuri's breathing heavy and looking down at him. He obviously was upset. So we're on the plane and we're flying back to Detroit, and the Red Wings are playing Game 5, and this is a clinching game. It's it's at home. It's in Detroit, and we're on the plane, and everyone's watching Yuri's hit, and Yuri's really, really afraid that he's going to be suspended for the 5th and what could be the clinching game at home of winning the Stanley Cup, meaning he won't play in that game. He'll still get on the cup, but he won't be out on the ice in uniform if he gets suspended if the Red Wings win the cup. So everyone's sitting there telling him, like, no, you're not going to get suspended. You're not going to get suspended. So, because, Yuri's a young man. He's a young kid, and he really wants to play, and he's all worried. He's all worried about it. And so he goes, "Do you think I'm going to get suspended, Art? Do you think I'm going to get suspended?" And and I'm looking, and I know we all think he's going to get suspended, number one. We all think there's no way he's not going to get suspended for this game. But we're all telling him no. And Scotty is like behind. Yuri's a big guy. He's like 6'4" or something, 6'5". So we're on the plane, and Yuri's talking to me, and Scotty gets up, and I'm telling him, and Scotty's giving me like signs like, he's not going to get suspended. Not going to get suspended. No. He's not going to get. And then after it's over, Yuri's going down the whole plane. He's going down asking, "You think I'm going to get suspended? You think I'm going to get suspended?" So Scotty comes up to me and goes, "Man," he goes, "what planet is that guy on?" He goes, "Get suspended." He goes, "They might throw him out of the league." And then he just started laughing. Yuri was suspended. Yuri Slager went in, played all of like 2 minutes or something in Game 5, gets his name on the cup, and becomes a national hero, in his country. I don't know if it's the Czech Republic or where Yuri Slager hails, but that's it. Fisher. It was so funny. Everybody knew he was going to be suspended for that game, but nobody could tell Yuri that because I guess they didn't want him to have a huge mental breakdown right in front of everyone. But that's my Yuri Fisher story.
Poor guy, but you got to play clean. You got to play by the rules. Okay, Daniela, your next player is Philip Zadina.
All right, so I'm actually going to stick to hockey with this one. The thing I remember most and my favorite story of Philip Zadina was his first Red Wings goal. It was in Colorado, and it was a power play. And I think I remember who assisted. It was Vanek and Philip Hronek on the assist, and it was a one-time shot. And I just remember the smile on Zadina's face after he scored that goal and his whole celebration. It was a great little sequence there and a really cool first goal.
Love it. That's a good memory to have. That's a lot more positive than Art's memory. But Art, now you've got Martin Lapointe. Last but not least.
Art's just full of stories.
I know. I love Marty Lapointe. He's one of my guys. I mean, I love seeing him, and now he works for the Montreal Canadiens in scouting, so he's at Little Caesars Arena quite a bit. There's a couple of stories. Number one, when Marty signed with the Red Wings, he was the 10th pick overall. He came into training camp, like 25 or 30 pounds overweight, and Brian Murray was all over him saying, "You bleep bleep. What did you do? Just party on your signing bonus all summer?" And Marty said yes. And there was another story when he was a young player, like 2 or 3 years into his career. I remember going up to him to interview him. This was the start of the season or training camp, but it was back at Joe Louis Arena. And so Marty's stall was right next to Steve Yzerman's. So Yzerman's sitting there, Steve's sitting in his stall, and I go up to Marty Lapointe and I start to interview him. And Steve had a habit. I could always see out of the corner of my eye. Steve would always be looking up at me while I was interviewing whomever was at his stall. Usually it was Marty. It later became Henrik Zetterberg. So I'm sitting there and I'm going to Marty and I go up to him. And I'm kind of a young reporter too, and a little bit of experience. I sort of know Marty, but I don't. But this is the real first time I was going to talk to him. And I said, "Hey, man," I mean, literally like that, real professional. "Hey, man, when are you going to get your acting gear? When are you going to start producing like a #1 draft pick? What's going on with you?" But I wasn't mean or malice about it. I said it like kind of in a caring tone. And Marty looks at me and goes, "Well, he didn't know what to say." He goes, "I'm only 21 years old." And that's when it kind of dawned on me. I'm talking to a kid. I'm talking to a young guy. He's 21, and I'm asking him, "Hey, when are you going to be this superstar player?" So after that interview, Steve gets up and he goes, "Art, come here." And I said, "Yeah." And I go, "Yeah, what?" It's like, "Hey, what's up, Steve?" And he says, he goes, "Look, if you think the difference between us winning the Stanley Cup and not winning the Stanley Cup is Marty Lapointe having a good year," he goes, "you're nuts." He said, "Marty's a great player and we need him. I'm not saying we don't need him, but in order to win a Stanley Cup, it takes all 20 guys on our roster. It is a team effort. Everybody has a role. Everybody has to perform that role. That's the only way we're going to win." He goes, "Whether Marty Lapointe gets 100 points a season and we don't do anything." And I think in a weird way, thinking about it now, he was kind of talking about himself. When he's getting 100 points a year or scoring 65 goals, the Red Wings weren't very good, and he thought that he had to do that. But when Steve became that two-way player, and I know it's well documented, and everybody saw what he was sacrificing, which was a lot of offense to be a great player. And I think that's what he was kind of telling me. So I always think about that time when I asked Marty when he was going to get his button gear. He tells me he's 21, and then Steve pulls me aside and says, "It's just not Marty. We all kind of have to get our butts in gear, but lay off Marty a little bit." So Marty Lapointe, great guy. Love Marty Lapointe.
Yep, teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, now this isn't over yet. So all these players have something in common. I have a feeling Art may know, but we're going to start with you, Daniela. What do these 4 guys, these 4 Red Wings, current and former, have in common?
Okay, so I think I know this one actually, and Art always, if I know it, Art is kind of going to automatically take the L. So I feel kind of bad about that, but I think I'm right. All of these guys were drafted by the Red Wings in the first round?
Okay. All right, Art.
Well, I think that's the obvious one. That's the Michigan State route. Take the easy one,
Oh,
the
geez.
obvious one. But no, I'm sorry, I can't help it. When I'm doing this with you two, all I can see is I got to say something about Michigan State to Daniela and Carly. But aside from that, I think they all were
And that's a
drafted
typical
by the Red Wings.
move, so we know.
Yeah, I think like I was taught in Ann Arbor, you've got to peel the layers back and really look into it and really examine it and come up with the truth. I think they all played in the Quebec League. They all played junior hockey in the Quebec League. I know they all did. Now, I don't know if that's the correct answer, but all of them, their junior hockey careers were in the Quebec League, not the Ontario League and not the Western League. They're all from the Quebec League.
Okay, so this is kind of funny. So you guys are both right, but you guys are both half right. So if you combine both of your answers, that's the answer. The connection is that they're all Red Wings first round picks from the Quebec League, the QMJHL, just like Alexis Lafreniere could be if the Red Wings win the draft lottery tomorrow. But Anthony Mantha was drafted 20th overall in 2013 from Val-d'Or. Yuri Fisher drafted 25th overall in 98 from Hull. Philip Zadina drafted 6th overall, as we know, in 2018 from Halifax. And LaPointe drafted 10th overall in 91 from Laval. So you guys get half points because you guys both were right.
Look at that.
Wrong all the way
through. You needed a Spartan to get the answer, Art.
Well, you know what? I mean, I would imagine that, Carly, you could learn something from this too. You could have said that this is kind of a double answer. Because I could, because I did say technically that they were number one draft choices, but to dig a little further, they all were from the same junior league. So, I mean, maybe you should rephrase that a little differently.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Daniela, I do not believe that for a second, but what the heck? I mean, I'll take half a win. What the hell?
So, okay, you guys both get half points. Bottom line.
All right. Thank you, Carly. Right. Settled.
Okay.
Settled.
All right. Yeah, great job, Carly.
Yeah, Art's going to text me after the show. It's not going to be the nice text I usually get.
Well, thank you, Carly. That wraps it up for today's Bet You Didn't Know, presented by Motor City Casino Hotel. Thank you to Motor City for presenting Bet You Didn't Know this week and every week right here on the Word on Woodward. Carly, I know you have more for us, though. You've been all over the social media channels. What have you found for us today?
Thanks, Daniela. Okay, so we all know that baseball is back, and the Tigers did a great job of announcing it on their Instagram. Check out this graphic that they posted that reads, in part, the following statement was released today by the Detroit Tigers and their personal attorney and business manager, Paz. In response to questions about their future career plans, we're back. Okay, love it. That was a good way to put out a statement like that. And then on the Red Wings side, check out Tyler Bertuzzi's new face mask. Let's see that picture. He and his fiance Ashley sported his hockey smile on their masks. How funny is that? I love it. I need one. And then let's move on. Last but not least, we know former general manager Kenny Holland was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Congrats to him. His friend and current general manager for the Red Wings, Steve Yzerman, released a statement to congratulate Kenny, calling Holland a great executive, great friend, and mentor. So congrats once again to Ken Holland. Very proud of him. He's done a lot for the Red Wings and then now with the Oilers. So it was good to see him finally get appreciated. And that's all we have for this mini little Let's Socialize. Don't forget to send in your questions for us to answer on the show later on.
Thank you, Carly. Again, make sure you guys are sending in your questions on whatever channel you're watching on. Type them into the comment section. Carly will be looking for them, and we will do our best to get those answered in the show. Later, we're going to talk to Ron Gardenhire, and of course, Jim Kalis is the headliner. He's going to talk about the Tigers 2020 draft class. And as we've mentioned a couple of times now, tomorrow is the NHL Draft Lottery. So we're going to talk a little bit of the top draft prospects. It's time for Downtown Hockeytown, presented by Labatt Blue Light, and today's guest is NHL.com columnist Nick Katsanika. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the NHL awards. The writers had to submit their ballots this week, and it's going to be an interesting one because obviously the players didn't get to play an entire season. But in your mind, who's the top contender for the Hart Trophy?
Well, I used to vote for a very long time, and I think my first ballot was 99-2000. And I remember getting the ballot, and it has the criteria for the ballot on it, and it says most valuable to his team. The Pearson Award, which became the Ted Lindsay Award, is most outstanding player. And to me, it's two different things. I have no problem if Leon Draisaitl wins it. He's got a huge lead in the scoring race. He's been outstanding for the Edmonton Oilers. But when I look at most valuable to his team, I think it's Nathan MacKinnon, and if I had a vote, it'd be for him. I think he has 14 more goals and 43 more points than anybody else for the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche are high in the NHL standings. They've been, riddled with injuries, and to me, no one's been more valuable to his team than Nate MacKinnon.
There's another interesting race too, and that's for the Calder Trophy, where I believe, and everybody thought that Cale Makar was going to win it, McKinnon's teammate. Who really has, since he came out of U.S. college, has played very, very well. But then there's another college player. And Nick, I know I'm not objective about this, and I'm pretty sure maybe you might not be objective. Thank heaven you're not voting. Is Michigan's own Quinn Hughes, who's tearing it up with Vancouver. I would assume that's the debate. Trying to throw your allegiance to the University of Michigan aside, Quinn Hughes has to win this thing, right?
Throwing it aside, he's got to win. I've got no problem. Like, if Quinn Hughes wins or Cale Makar wins, I think there's a good argument for either one. I did sit, so you couldn't see my Michigan Wolverine stuff in the background. But, look, Kubalik scored 30-plus goals for Chicago. That's impressive. Adam Fox has been really good for the New York Rangers. I think, there are other candidates that are deserving of in the conversation, but it's a two-horse race. What hurts Makar is he got hurt. He missed, I think, 7 games, which depressed his numbers a little. But if you look at his points per game, he has more than Hughes. Hughes, you can make an argument for him as well. So I think either one of them would be a deserving choice. But obviously, the kid who lives in Canton and played for Michigan, I might have a little bias toward.
I do.
Oh, I know you do. This might be the first time that I've been stuck with 2 Michigan guys. Usually I have another Sparty with me, but I've got 2 Michigan guys right now.
You're outnumbered. Sorry.
I know.
And it doesn't get any better than that, Danielle, and I mean,
exactly what I was thinking.
Lucky you.
Exactly what I was thinking. Let's switch our focus a little here, guys, and talk about the upcoming draft lottery that it will be tomorrow night. And the Red Wings have an 18.5% chance of getting the number 1 pick. One thing I want to talk to you about, Nick, is Steve Yzerman mentioned in his press conference that he doesn't think there's an area on this team that doesn't need improvement. And if they do end up with that number 1 pick, we're assuming they're going to go Alexi Lafreniere. But if they do fall, what do you think they'll address first?
I think they have to address drafting the best player available. I think that it doesn't matter. To put it delicately, I agree with Steve. I don't think there's a spot on this team that doesn't need addressing. They've got to come out of this draft with a difference maker. Obviously, you hope they win the lottery and get the number 1 pick for their sake. But I remember speaking to somebody in the organization at one point, and I said, look, you guys got to win this lottery. You have to make something of this season in a positive way. He said, Nick, doesn't matter what happens in the lottery. We got to find a player. And he's right. We just talked about Cale Makar. All right. He was drafted 4th overall, right? Which is what, the worst case scenario for the Detroit Red Wings. So whether you're first, second, third, or fourth, you got to find a star, right? A difference maker. And I really think that's what it comes down to. And losing the lottery isn't the worst thing. You just have to make the best of wherever you pick.
Well, it's interesting you would bring that up because, I'm very pessimistic. The NHL Draft Lottery, which we could do a whole segment on, which I think is one of the most bizarre lottery systems known to professional sports. But with that said, I know the Red Wings are going to draft fourth. They're going to go down to four. They have, Ottawa's going to get picks 1 and 2, and then who knows? Maybe the Montreal Canadiens, if they lose in the first round of 24, if we get that far, we'll pick third, and then the Red Wings. They have a really interesting thing because if the high end forwards go Lafreniere, Byfield, and then Stützle from Germany at number 4. And I'm asking you to be a soothsayer here, Nick. Do they go for Jamie Drysdale? By all accounts, is a number 1 defenseman in the NHL, not just a top pair, a number 1, which maybe the Red Wings don't have right now in their system, even though they have a lot of them. Or does Stevie go off the board, and does he go to Askarov, the Russian goalie, which I'm pretty sure he has an affinity for Russian goalies. But how do you see that playing out at number 4 for Detroit?
No clue. None. And I don't mean to be, to avoid the question, but who saw him picking Sider last year? Nobody, right? So we know Steve is willing to think for himself and go off the board and do what he thinks is right. I can't predict the future. I'm not a draft guru, but what I can give perspective on is this. Where was Steve Yzerman drafted? Number 4, right? 1983?
Right.
So if you go back to 1983, Red Wings are terrible. Okay, everybody wants Pat LaFontaine. Red Wings don't get him. They get this guy, Steve Yzerman. Who's this guy, right? I don't think anybody thought that Steve Yzerman was going to come in and turn into the captain and the eventual GM, right? So you don't really know, right? We don't really know who these players are going to turn into. They have to find a difference maker. The other half of that is, okay, so they drafted Steve Yzerman in 1983. We all know how that turned out. But when did they win the Cup? 1997, right? So they still had to surround him with Sergei Fedorov and Nicholas Lidstrom and Brendan Shanahan and the rest, right? So I think this draft is really important. I think they need to hit on the pick. I think they need to get a difference maker. I still think it's only one piece in the puzzle.
Again, we're talking about all of this, and like you said, it's a really fluid situation with all of it. But I do want to touch on free agency just a little bit. The Red Wings are definitely going to have to make a splash there too, and I'm sure it depends on who they draft in the upcoming draft. But what do you think some possible scenarios are for the Red Wings in free agency?
Well, if I'm the Red Wings, it may be to my advantage that the cap goes down or stays static because that would create problems for other teams. And that will create opportunities for the Red Wings, either with free agents who are out there or teams that need to make trades in order to adjust their cap. If I'm Yzerman, I'm sniffing around that. So I think a lower cap for Detroit is a good thing. And it's very possible we'll have that. We don't know what's going to happen here because obviously revenues are going to take a hit. The salary cap's tied to revenues. The NHL and the NHLPA may negotiate some sort of artificial cap. So we don't know where the cap number is going to end up. But if I'm a Detroit fan, I'm kind of hoping that it's low and that squeezes some other teams and creates opportunities for Detroit. What Steve's philosophy will be on free agency and what's available will be interesting. Again, I think it's short term. You're not going to turn this around by signing a bunch of flashy free agents, but I think you can use it in a wise manner to make the team better in the short term and more entertaining, but also B, to kind of bridge the gap while your younger players develop.
This team's not going to hit the ice for a long, long time. We don't know what's going to happen with the AHL. I know they've announced a play committee, and Steve is part of it along with Ken Holland. But I'm kind of curious, Nick. What do you think is going to happen? When do you think the Red Wings are going to hit the ice? And is the league going to have to make accommodations for these 7 teams if they do have this playoff system? Because you can't keep the Red Wings off the ice for 10 solid months. I mean, they have to at least allow them to somehow congregate as a team.
Well, For the Detroit Red Wings, that's my number one concern right now, because it's all about drafting and developing. So the players that you have now, you got to develop them, right? We were on the conference call with Steve, and that was my question to him. What do you do right now? Do you your European players, do you keep them in Europe or send them back to Europe? Like if Germany's open and North America is not, do you send Sider home to play? I think it's a little early to get answers to these questions, but they're good ones. I think at the moment, the NHL and the NHLPA are so focused on resuming this season and the CBA issues that's the number one priority. If that gets launched, right, and everything goes right, and play resumes, I think they can move on to the next things. But I'm with you. Like, do you do mini camps? Do you have those 7 teams do a little Traverse City style tournament? They've got to get on the ice. They've got to find ways to keep these guys developing in this downtime. Now, that said, it's going to be on the individual players to take control of their development in some sense too. Like Steve's money quote to me that day was, "We're going to see who wants to be a hockey player. Like, we're going to find out. Like, who if you want to take the foot off the gas, you got no better excuse than right now. So who wants to be a player? Who wants to develop?" I think you saw a little of that Steve Yzerman competitive fire come out in that answer.
Nick, I'm going to ask you the most important question that we have asked you so far in this interview. And we've been talking about this a little bit leading up to tomorrow's NHL Draft Lottery. But do you have any good luck superstitions that we can all do tonight to make sure that the Red Wings have the most luck that they can possibly have heading into tomorrow night?
Everybody go get an octopus, boil it, and throw it on the driveway. I don't know.
Hey, that's not a bad one. I like that.
Why not? I haven't had some good octopus throwing in a while. Let's do that.
Well, Nick, we really appreciate your insight. It's been great to have you. We'll definitely have to have you back really soon. A big thank you to our friends at Labatt Blue Light for presenting Downtown Hockey Town. Labatt Blue Light, refreshing Canadian Pilsner. Visit your local retailer when safe to pick up some Labatt Blue Light. Once a show, guys, I mute my mic. Once a show. It's just a thing, okay? I apologize for that. But what I said was, if you can't find any plates to break like Art suggests, maybe you should take Nick's suggestion and throw an octopus on the driveway. I think that's safer.
Well, it might be safer. I think you might get in trouble with PETA, but that's for another time. With that said, I've looked and have tried to figure out. I cannot believe how many collector plates are available. I mean, it's astounding. You can get collector plates of Winston Churchill, or you can get of Dachshunds, and then you can get flowers. I mean, it's a business. It's a huge racket. So I guess my point being is there's going to be a lot of plates that you can break, throw them on your neighbor's porch, and before you know it, Alexis Lafreniere is in the red and white wearing that winged wheel. So let's do it.
I love it, Art. I love it. And another thing I really liked that Nick said was that Steve Yzerman was drafted 4th, and that was in 1983. The Red Wings didn't win a cup until 97. So fans, patience. And the Red Wings are going to get a good player in this upcoming draft, whether they draft 1 or 4. But we'll find that out tomorrow in the draft lottery. And the Word on Woodward will be hosting a special show directly following that draft lottery. So it will start around 8:30 p.m. for you guys right here on all of the social channels. So make sure that you are checking that out. Now, guys, we're going to get back into some baseball. It's time for Brush Street Beat, presented by McLaren Healthcare. And guys, we've got a very special guest joining us today with the news of the MLB return to play plan. Ron Gardenhire, the Tigers manager. Hey, baseball is coming back. Just next week, we're going to be heading to spring training at Comerica Park. And Ron, I want to start with asking you, a lot has been going on these past few months, both with the obvious COVID-19, and then there was the drama and coming to an agreement on this return to play plan. What have the past few months been like for you, and how are you feeling about everything now?
Well, it's been anxiety, a lot of anxiety with the COVID itself, and trying to, stay clear of everything, wearing masks everywhere we go, and actually getting to know my wife. I mean, I've never spent this much time with her. So, and she still likes me, so I'm going good right now. So, but it's been crazy. And finally, having these meetings, been on Zoom so many times you can't believe it, but finally getting together and talking about playing baseball for real now, and we're going to do this, and we're going to start spring training up in Detroit, so pretty exciting now.
Ron, since you had some spring training before everything was put on pause, when you go back, and I know you have to split the squad, there's going to be 60 guys, and some are going to be morning guys, some will be afternoon. At least they've got some work in. I mean, will they not be as far behind as say, if they were picking up, and having a full 6-7 months off as opposed to the last 3?
Well, and my coaches, they've been reaching out. I've asked my coaches, my hitting coach, my pitching coach, to talk to these guys and let them know that we need them to be something a little bit more than almost ready. We need them to be able to get going right from the get-go, because we don't have that much time. Most of these guys have really been working their tails off. I mean, Matt Boyd's told us he's ready to throw 7 innings already, and that I understand that with Matty Boyd. He's game on. So a lot of these guys get it, and they've been working out, and we've talked to most of them, and hopefully, we won't have too many. You worry about the injuries, you worry about the COVID. When you get to spring training, hopefully we can bypass all that, and everybody will come in pretty good shape, and we'll go from there.
As mentioned, spring training will start next week at Comerica Park right here in Detroit. Can you walk us through some of the health and safety measures that have been put in place to take care of the Tigers staff and players?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get tested right away, get tested, and then we have to go back to the hotel for a couple days and let them check and make sure everything's okay or not okay. That's immediate, but it's going to be an everyday thing. Before we go in, they'll shoot your forehead and make sure your temperature's okay, and you'll probably have to do a test every 2 or 3 days, and we'll find out more once we get there and do all this, but we've had long conversations, and our trainer explained it all today. It sounds something like I've never done before. So I guess it'll be entertaining. They tell me it doesn't take long when you do the test on an everyday basis, but they want to check you. We'll be able to, but the first day, I think when we go in there, it's going to be a little more entertaining, if that's the word.
Right. Ryan, you have a great personality. I am curious, if you have to wear a mask in the dugout, do you have one picked out yet? Do you have a favorite one right now?
Well, my wife and I have actually been buying masks, and we buy them for everybody else. And of course, the 2 that I picked out, my son and his fiance came over the other day, and what do you think they did? They took the mask. So I've got like a bandana for my motorcycle, and I just pull it up over my face. It's an American flag. That's probably what you'll see me in.
I know you mentioned some Tigers masks in your press conference yesterday. Maybe we should get on those Tigers masks, and we can all have matching ones, maybe an English D or just some stripes, something like that.
I would love to wear a Tiger. If I have to wear a mask, I would love to have one in the uniform. That would be straight entertainment for me. I would enjoy that.
One of the biggest takeaways from talking with you, Alavila, and Matt Boyd yesterday in the press conferences was that Michael Fulmer is now able to practice baseball at full capacity. He's 100% and ready to go. And in a normal situation, he would probably pitch a few games in the minors and be called upon and bring up to Detroit when he was ready. With that out of the question, what does that process look like for him? And how long do you think we're really looking at until he's able to start a game for the Tigers?
Well, and I've been over to Lakeland a couple of times, and he looks great. He's lost so much weight, and he's doing everything. He's throwing, and he's chomping at the bit. And the one thing that we try to tell him, we got to be calm here. This has been some pretty serious stuff you went through with your leg and your arm. So let's not try to rush into this. Let's let him get some innings underneath his belt, and we'll see. I know in spring training he's going to want to make our baseball team, and that's why you love the guy. He's so competitive, and he's doing well. But I just want to make sure, and I've talked to the trainer about it, let's just do the right thing first and let this calm down a little bit, because if he starts going too hard, he gets hurt. He just wasted a lot of time for himself. So we want to do the right thing with him, but it's really cool having him back because he's a stud when he's healthy, and he can really help us.
Ron, a couple of things that came out of Wednesday's press conference was that Alavila was cautious when talking about the Tigers' young arms, if we'll see him this season in Detroit. Of course, Mize, Manning, Struble, possibly Faedo. You were a little more optimistic and saying, yeah, well, maybe we will get these guys will see some action in the big leagues, throw at least an inning or two. And of course, Matt Boyd was, yeah, these guys are ready. Let's get them in there. How optimistic are you that we're going to see some of these young arms we've heard so much about maybe make their Detroit major league debut?
Well, and we've talked about this, and we've always said not rush them, but these guys, they can do some things. We saw them in spring, our first spring. What would that be called? 1.0.
Yeah.
And now we'd like to see them in 2.0. But they're going to be there. You can't let these guys, we can't just let it be a wasted year and them not do anything. So, and our only option is basically, somewhere during this, have a possibility of doing it. And that's always going to be up to Al. Al's going to make the final decision, but I'm always tapping on his shoulder going, I really like this guy, Al. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think it'd be fun for all involved if these players go out and they're healthy and they're ready to do this and able to do this. I think everybody would like to see him, including Al and myself.
Ron, do you feel the same way about the guys that aren't pitchers, like a Riley Green or maybe even a Spencer Torkelson?
Absolutely. And Cody Clemens, they really showed up in spring training. Now, Torkelson, his first year, that's probably going to be a little difficult to do something like that with him. But I want to see him. Hopefully we get to see him in this 60-man thing. I know we will, and shake his hand and introduce myself. And then, some of the other guys. We got some talented kids coming up. That's what's really fun in this organization. We were having a good spring. I really enjoyed our team. We were scoring runs when we had the big boys in there, and these kids came up and they didn't back down a bit. They were really getting after it. So we've got a lot of good things going for us, this organization. And I've told everybody, we got to be ready here when this thing starts, this 60 games. We have to be ready to go from the get-go because anything can happen this year.
Well, we've heard for so long, Ron, that pitching is maybe the strength of the organization at this point. In a 60-game schedule, do you believe that the pitchers will be ahead of the hitters and that anything can happen because the strength of this club is pitching?
Yeah, pitchers, they're going to have an advantage because they've been throwing. And honestly, because you normally go through a full spring and you get whatever, each hitter gets 50 to 75 at bats, whatever it might be. Well, it's going to be harder to do that now. For one thing, we're not playing other teams unless we set something up and have to travel. So we're going to play inter-squad games. So really, they're going to be facing our pitchers. And I think pitchers will be ahead early this year just because of how much we've had to lay off.
You said it yourself, anything can really happen in a 60-game season. Now, heading into a normal season, the Tigers weren't expected to be making a playoff run, but that could change this year. In your mind, what are some realistic expectations and goals heading into this short season?
Well, first, get healthy and stay away from this COVID thing, everybody involved. And then I like our chances. I think, we brought in some veteran hitters that can drive a baseball. Kroner and Schuper on the right side over there. I mean, these guys can hit. Cabby's looks as good as I've seen him since I've been manager here. And in great shape. He's been working. He sent video of him hitting down there in Miami. And I'm telling you, we actually have some of the young kids have got a year experience now. So there's some pretty good things. And we have competition for jobs in spring training, which we were just basically giving them away the last couple of years because they were all kids and trying to figure out who could and who couldn't. But we're going to have competition. And when we get going here, there's going to be competition for some of these jobs, that's how you want to do it because that's when you get better.
Ron, do you have a sense of, are you happy, a sense of relief? Was there a moment where you thought that maybe this day wasn't going to arrive, that baseball may not come back this year?
Yeah, and the emotions have been all over the place because you hear some good stuff and all of a sudden then it doesn't turn out very good. And all the conversations when they started negotiating, that wasn't fun to listen to and watch and see all the things being said. I don't like that kind of stuff, but you know what? I think through it all, I think we'll all be better for it. And hopefully ownership and Players Association sometime or another, they get everything set up where we don't have to do with that again. COVID's, really hurt a lot of people and a lot of people have lost their lives. So we're going through so much bigger than baseball. So it was disappointing to see the bickering going on about baseball with everything in the world going on. But you know what? It's part of the business, and hopefully we're past it right now. We could all move forward and just shake hands and play baseball.
Ron, we were able to talk to a few players about the idea of playing in front of no fans, but from your perspective, how is that going to change the game?
Well, I guess when I walk out to make a pitch and move, if they let me do that, maybe I won't get booed, only by my own players. But you know, the fans are everything. And honestly, it's going to be difficult. I mean, with nobody cheering and all those things, a guy gets a big home run. The only people who are going to be cheering is us, and we can't shake hands, we can't high five. So it's going to be different, and we're just going to have to try to figure out ways around everything, how we can get it done and still be safe. But the fans are everything. That's what the game's all about.
Would you like to see them pipe in sound? I've watched the German soccer league, the Bundesliga. I've watched Korean baseball, and I thought I wasn't going to be a fan of it, but I kind of like it. It's kind of interesting when you hear that. Would you like to see piped in sound? Not people booing you, maybe grumble. Maybe when you go out to the mound to make a pitching change, there'd be grumbling sounds. But has that been bandied about? And do you think that that may be something we'll see?
I think they'll try just about anything. I really do. I think they're not afraid to really go out there on a limb and try something. You know what? We need noise. You need music. You need something. Once the game starts going, the pitcher's pitching. Sure, you turn down the music, but you could still have some roars, and that might be entertaining for us. Just like I said, it depends on what part of the country they're from. If it's like New York, I don't really want to hear their voices. They kill me. So, and I love New York. I played there. You know what I mean? But when they start talking, yo, Gardy, give me a ball. I don't want to hear it.
Ron, I know this is kind of jumping all over the place a little bit, but I did want to talk to you about the Tigers draft class this year. When you look at the grades they were given by media and writers, it's A's and A pluses all across the board. What were your thoughts about the 2020 draft class?
I was excited. I played a little part in it because we lost 114 games last year. We got the #1 pick. I happened to be the manager, so I kind of helped out a little bit. But you know what? We had a really good draft. They did very well, and that's what everybody's talking about. And the players we got are really exciting baseball players and some offensive stars. So this ought to be pretty fun. And we're going to get a chance to meet them because they're going to bring them in. So that'd be kind of cool to meet these kids. And from everything I've heard, we did really well, just like you guys. And our scouts are they're smiling. They did good.
Well, another player that had a pretty good spring, and last year in last year's draft, when I read about him, they said, well, Riley Green, he's slotted 5th. The Tigers are picking 5th. He'll probably go there. Everything I read about him, I go, why isn't this guy going to be picked #1? But wow, were you surprised at how he acclimated himself in spring training? He had a really good spring.
He was killing it. He was absolutely playing great, and you could see some young things in the outfield, a couple of mistakes he made, trying to do too much, and that's just being young. But with that bat in his hand, he's phenomenal. I mean, he was hitting major league pitching, and honestly, we probably brought him over too many times and got him too many at bats because he was leading our team in hitting, I think, and that wasn't good. It's not supposed to happen yet. So he's a stud. He can really hit.
Ron, I want to leave you with this. You know how loyal Tigers fans are, and it's been a long road for us to get to this point. What would your message be for them right now?
Well, and everybody, like I said, everybody's been through an awful lot here. And baseball, I think, hopefully can inject some happiness into people. And with that old English D going out there, we're proud of it. I'm proud of this baseball team, what we had in spring training, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And we can't wait to get back out there and give you guys something to cheer for. So, this club is on the way up. I mean, it's definitely on the way up. Our draft picks, we just talked about that. The team that we had in spring training was a blast. Great bunch of guys that really get after it and pretty talented, along with a lot of the young kids that are starting to develop, getting better and better themselves. So there's a lot going on for the Detroit Tigers.
Very well said, Ron, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to the next few months in baseball making its return. Also, a big thank you to McLaren Healthcare for bringing us Brush Street Beat this week and every week right here on The Word on Woodward. Gardy's excited about the baseball season, and he's also excited about the Tigers 2020 draft class. We're going to go right into our headliner, who has more for you on these 2020 draft picks.
Thank you very much, Daniela. It is time for the headliner brought to you by Miller Lite. Let's bring in the senior writer for MLBpipeline.com, Jim Kalis. Jim, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here.
I'm a lifelong Detroiter. I am a big Detroit sports fan. Covered all Detroit sports teams for longer than I care to admit, as I like to say. But Jim, I have to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever seen a reaction to a Detroit team's draft in a positive nature like I did a couple of weeks ago when the Tigers made their selection. I know that you called it the best draft of all 31 clubs. You rated it #1 when you gave your top 6 teams. Why was this draft? Why did the Tigers, no pun intended, hit it out of the park in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, one caveat I always say, when we rank drafts this quickly, obviously baseball takes longer to play out than even the other sports where the guys go straight to the top level. And the teams that pick at the top and have an extra pick are usually going to look pretty good. But I did really look like what the Tigers did. I thought they had the best draft of anybody, and it started with the #1 pick. I mean, I don't think it was any surprise. I mean, I wasn't the only one. I think everybody was projecting Spencer Torkelson, the Arizona State first baseman, would go #1. The Tigers. And I mean, this is a great year to be picking #1 overall. Just the reviews I get from talking to scouts who've seen Torkelson play. I mean, this guy's torn it up for 3 years at Arizona State. He broke Barry Bonds' home run record, freshman home run record at Arizona State. He almost broke Bob Horner's career record. He was only too short when the season ended prematurely. And it's not just the power. It's a combination of power, hitting ability, plate discipline. And I had a number of people suggest that he's probably the best offensive prospect to come out of the draft in maybe 20 years. And I don't think we'll see this because it doesn't make sense with service time considerations. But I had multiple scouting directors suggest that he could go straight to the big leagues and be one of Detroit's best hitters right now. So I think getting him was a great start. And then they had a number of picks after that I thought were really nice picks as well.
Fans are always eager. They're always anxious. You hear a 1-1, first overall pick. They want to see him in that Old English D yesterday. And with COVID-19, everything is so much up in the air right now. Could he be fast tracked? Could he be in Detroit much sooner than later, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I told you I had a couple scout directors even suggested he could be in the big leagues now, if there was a big league season going on, which wouldn't make sense for the Tigers as a rebuilding team in terms of their service time and, what it would mean for his free agency and arbitration. But, if we had, who knows what this year is going to look like on the development side. But I think with a normal, if things were normal, I think you could expect Spencer Torkelson in Detroit some point next year. I don't know if he's going to really get a lot of opportunity to do much in pro ball this year. So maybe we should say 2022, but he's not, I mean, I think really with him that the bulk of it's going to be, how much time does he spend trying to learn third base? I mean, I don't think the bat's going to need a whole lot of work. I think it's just going to be getting acclimated to better pitching in pro ball and then moving on. So you'll see him in Detroit pretty quick.
I can remember the Tiger farm system being rated, not being rated. It was like, well, we have to rate him, so we'll put him dead last. But their farm system has really, really upped its game. I mean, they are certainly, for a team that's rebuilding, their farm system is right there with them. I mean, they've done a really good job of replenishing the stock.
Yeah, they have. I mean, we had them going into the spring as the 5th best farm system in baseball. Before I was with MLB, I worked for a long time at Baseball America. And even a few years before I got to Baseball America, they started ranking organizations and farm systems, I think in the mid-'80s, like around 1983 or 4. And there's only one. Not only is this the highest the Tigers have ever been ranked in my time at MLB and when I was at Baseball America, they've only been in the top 10 once in 35 plus years of ranking systems at both places. For whatever reason, I mean, they had really good farm systems at the end of the 70s that wound up, fueling that 1984 World Series championship club. But yeah, no, I mean, this is the best it's been in a while. You don't draft for need. And I don't think the Tigers were necessarily saying, hey, we're going to draft only 6 hitters with our 6 picks this year. But yeah, they have a very pitching heavy system before the draft with Casey Mize, who was obviously #1 pick a couple years ago, Matt Manning, Alex Faedo, Tarek Skubal, and on and on and on. And I think this draft kind of bounces out the system even a little bit more because it really, upped the stock of hitting prospects in the system too. Clearly starting with Torkelson.
Let's get to their second pick. And they signed him, Dylan Dingler, the catcher from Ohio State. I know in your mock draft you had him rated 23rd going to the Indians. So is he a steal? I mean, is he a steal at number 38? Is this a guy? Obviously, the Tigers like him; they already signed him. that could really be an impact bat maybe for Detroit.
Yeah, he could. I think he has a chance to be a steal. I was surprised he didn't go on the first day of the draft. Clearly, he went with the first pick on the second day of the draft. But there's a lot to like about this guy. He's super athletic for a catcher. He played center field as a freshman at Ohio State. Not too many catchers play center field. He can run a 6.6 60. Not that you're running sprints, but a lot more agile behind the plate than your typical catcher. He's got a well above average arm. It's a really, really good arm. And he came on offensively this year. He didn't have a big year last year, but he played through a broken hamate, and he didn't play summer ball last year. So I think he was flying under the radar a little bit coming in this year. Got off to a really good start this year. He's got plus raw power. He controls the strike zone. And this guy's a chance to be a really, really good player on both sides of the ball behind the plate. So, yeah, I think if you can get a catcher like that in the second round, that's a tremendous value, because I really did think he was going to go in the 20s somewhere, and they got him at 38.
When I heard with their competitive balance pick, secondary second round pick at 62, that they were able to get Daniel Cabrera, and I am not a draft guru by any stretch of the imagination. I thought, my gosh, here is the steal of the draft. I thought that Cabrera, from what I read, was a guy that could go in the first round. I mean, that he was a very, very well thought of. Were you surprised that he fell to the Tigers at 62?
Yeah, a little surprised he went at 62. I didn't quite. I thought he was going to be more in that kind of, 30 to 45 range. And to be honest, part of it may have been, we'll have to see what he signs for. It could have been a signability issue. Especially, I don't know what his bonus is going to be, but if the can't even speak, Tigers sign him for more than his slot value, then it's possible that he fell because of signability. I like him. He's one of the best left-handed hitters in the college ranks this year. Really nice swing. Doesn't try to do too much at the plate. One reason he probably didn't go a little bit higher, and he's a good player, is he never really put up a monster year at LSU. For a guy who's always regarded as like one of the best hitters in college baseball, he never had that year where he hit like 380 with 17 homers or something. But he's a good hitter. Probably average runner. Played right field this year, left field in the past. Maybe you try him in center. The bat's probably going to have to be the carrying tool. But yeah, I think to get that bat there was a nice value also. I thought they got pretty good value with all their picks. Again, not that people are drafting off of our list, but Torkelson we had ranked number 1, but all their other guys, they got 15 or 20 spots lower than we had them lined up on our top 200, with the exception of Trey Cruz. And it's not like Trey Cruz was a reach; he was just the one exception. But most of these guys, if people just been drafting off our list, which again, I'm not suggesting anybody would have done, Dylan Dingler goes in the first round. Cabrera, we actually had ranked 38th, so he would have gone with the Dingler pick. He would have been the first pick in the second round. Gage Workman would have been a third rounder. Colt Keith would have been a third rounder, and Trey Cruz would have been a fourth rounder. So I mean, they got a lot of value out of their draft, I thought.
When you look at Trey Cruz, who the Tigers have also signed, he, the pedigree's there. I mean, Jose Cruz and Jose Cruz Sr. I mean, they certainly knew how to play baseball. A shortstop, Tigers need shortstops. Played at Rice. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he had 2 of his great uncles play in the big leagues too. So really nice bloodlines there. He's a switch hitter. He was draft eligible last year. Wasn't real signable. Went in the 37th round of the Nationals, and he got better this year, even though it was only 4 weeks. Scouts liked the improvements they saw him make this year. He's a switch hitter. He used to have a big leg kick from the left side of the plate. Kind of toned that down. Looked a little bit more stable offensively. I think he's going to be a guy who hits for average. 15 to 20 homers maybe. He's not a great runner, but after being more like a below average runner in the past, he was closer to average this year. I don't think he sticks at shortstop. He's just kind of okay there. But, what you saw in him this year, you felt better about his chances at staying, maybe moving to second base and staying there. You could play third if he hits for enough power. But, I thought he helped himself this year. The area scouts I talked to in Texas liked the strides he made a lot this year. And, again, interesting bloodlines. And, if he makes it, he'll be the third generation and fifth member of his family to play in the big leagues.
Well, that's quite, as you said, quite a pedigree. We've already kind of touched upon him. The real third baseman for Arizona State, Spencer Torkelson's teammate, Gage Workman, really a good power hitter. Seems to have some tools. I would imagine the Tigers would like him to cut down his strikeout rate, perhaps. But he also seems like a player that, with the right kind of seasoning, that he could be a Tiger someday too.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's interesting also. Like I said, he probably would have been a third-round pick. He is a power over hit guy right now, but he's a switch hitter with pretty interesting pop, really good athlete, quality third baseman, might have been the best defensive third baseman in the college ranks, like I said. And again, I mentioned Alika Williams, who the Rays took in the supplemental first round, was their shortstop. Workman might have been a shortstop on a lot of college teams. So he's a real interesting guy too. He's got more upside than your typical fourth-round pick.
Well, in the fifth round, I know MLB Pipeline, you guys rated him as your favorite pick, and we just talked about players that you were impressed with that the Tigers drafted. The high schooler, the Gatorade Mississippi High School Player of the Year, Tigers also signed him, Colt Keith. I think I've said we've talked about 5 players, and almost all of them, except Torkelson, could be the steal of the draft. But Colt Keith is a very, very interesting pick. He's MLB Pipeline's favorite pick. What about Colt Keith? What did it come down to signability? I mean, he was pretty vocal about, I have a number, and if I don't hit that, I'm going to Arizona State.
Yeah, well, when they signed him, for $500,000, which is only about $74,000 over the slot value at 5. So I don't know if he had a higher number early and came off of it as the draft was getting ready to end in the 5th round. And I mean, look, they knew they weren't going to keep these guys probably, but Arizona State can't be too happy with the Tigers. They took Torkelson, they took Workman, and Colt Keith is probably, would have been their third baseman next year. My dogs are going a little nuts in the background. Colt Keith would have replaced Workman at third base next year if he'd gone to college. But no, he's real interesting too. I mean, he's a guy who I think can hit for average and power, left-handed bat. He's going to get stronger. So, I mean, this is a guy who could be a pretty good all-around offensive player. He's got a strong arm, fits that third base profile really well. Look, I mean, it's only a 5-round draft, so you don't get as many players as you normally would. But really, I mean, and this is easier said than done, all 6 of these guys the Tigers got are legitimate prospects. I don't personally handle our Tigers top 30 list, so I don't know that I'm going to tell you that all 6 of these guys will wind up on their top 30, because like I said, it's a pretty good list to begin with. But all 6 of these guys are worthy of making a typical top 30 prospect list. I mean, they got some over slot guys, but they didn't do anything where you went big on one guy and then you took a lesser player to be able to afford him. I mean, they got 6 really good players in this draft. And that's why, I mean, again, it's early, and they had the number 1 pick and they had an extra pick and they had some advantages. But I thought this draft impressed me more than any draft among the 30 teams.
I'm going to ask you a question, and it might be kind of a loaded question. The Tigers are in a rebuild. The farm system looks in pretty good shape. They have an abundance of at least starting pitching. It looks promising. Could the Tigers turn this around rather quickly, or are we still a few years away until Detroit becomes not only competitive, but perhaps even a contender?
I would say I think they could turn around pretty quickly for a couple of reasons. One, these pitchers we're talking about, Mize and Manning, Skubal, Alex Faedo. I mean, again, this is not going to be a normal year, but those guys all would have been ready probably at some point this year. So the pitchers aren't too far away. Riley Green, last year's first-round pick's going to move very quickly for a high school guy. But it's been my experience that when you look at the very best farm systems, and like I said, we've got them ranked in the top 5 right now. This draft's only going to help them. When you were talking about the very best farm systems, they almost always pay off with a contender. The teams use that talent and become a contender. And a lot of times those teams wind up sneaking back into contention quicker than you think. I'm not saying they're going to contend for sure in 2022, but in 2022, Mize, Manning, Green, Skubal, Faedo, Isaac Paredes, they drafted a bunch of college guys out of this draft. I mean, a lot of their best players in their farm system are not, more than a couple years away. This isn't a system where you've got a bunch of 18-year-old guys who barely played pro ball. This is a system where a lot of their best players have gotten to high A, double A, and even the guys that got in this year's draft, Torkelson should move pretty quick. These guys can move quick. So I'll say I think they're going to probably contend earlier than people think. I would, but I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they're, say, 5 years away. I think it'll be a lot quicker than that.
Jim Kalis of the senior writer for MLBpipeline.com. Thank you very, very much. We have to have you on. I love talking draft. I just love it. I love watching players. I just love youngsters, and then as they blossom into major league players and some major league stars. It was great. Thank you very much for your time, Jim. Really enjoy your work, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, thank you. Great talking to you, and anytime. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thanks. All right, there you have it, Daniela. That is the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Hey, Jim said it. I believe him. I'm looking forward to the Tigers being good in a very short period of time.
I'm with you, Art. Great job with that interview. Great to hear from you and Jim. Very insightful for each of our 2020 Tigers draft picks. Learned a lot. Very, very great job, Art. And we are going to get into Let's Socialize right now, presented by our friends at AAA. Let's bring in Carly Johnson, who's been all over the social media accounts, chatting with you guys, getting your questions. Carly, what do you got for us today?
That's right, Daniela. Thanks. Okay, we're going to start with an interesting question for Art. Hank wants to know, how long has Art been doing sports? I'm assuming covering sports. So, Art, I think you're going to age yourself in this answer, but lay it on us.
Well, geez. Well, if we even go back to high school, where I covered a couple of Livonia Franklin teams, really, I'll tell you what, I really started doing sports in the fall of 1976 at the University of Michigan, their student radio station. I was a reporter. I did Michigan football play-by-play, covered the hockey team. So it really goes back to that. But I really, if you really want to know the whole genesis of where it really started, for Christmas one year, my parents got me a little small recorder, a reel-to-reel, a little mini tape recorder. And believe me, that was high-end, state-of-the-art stuff. And I used to do a show called, I don't know, something sports with, and I used the name, and I can't believe I still remember this. I used the name Don Dagushki was who I was. I had this accent, and I would have my friends come in, and I would have them be like athletes, like Bart Starr or Johnny Unitas or Gordie Howe, and I would interview them as Don Dagushki. I have no idea where that name came from. And I would start doing it that way. So I always wanted to be a professional athlete. Really, let's be honest, was never really good enough. But I always loved sports. I always wanted to. I always wanted to be part of it. So the next best thing for a guy like me is if you can't, if you can't do, cover it. And so that's how I've been doing it. So I've been doing it a really long time. I just love the competition. Everyone in my family, like my dad was the big football fan. My grandfather was the big baseball fan. My mom was the big hockey fan. And I kind of found basketball on my own. So I just had like inspirations all over the place. So I just love athletics. I just love it. I love, like I said, the competition, the color, the excitement, the pageantry, how every game is its own little separate story. So it's been great. So to answer your question, it's been a long, long time.
I love it. And I love that you talk about how you got started. I know my parents have always told me they knew I was going to be a reporter because I used to prop up our family camcorder like on a chair or something and interview my friends. So you got to start somewhere. All right, Daniela, this is a tough question for you. An interesting one as well. Who would win in a WOW? So that's the word on Woodward, home run derby.
Ooh, me, 100%. I have talked about this before. When I was a kid, we used to all get together in the neighborhood, and one of our neighbors had a baseball field in their backyard, and I was known as the big hitter. Everyone had to back up because odds are I was hitting it over the fence. So if you couldn't catch it or you couldn't make that diving save, honestly, sometimes it was so far gone you had no chance. But yeah, it would definitely be me. I'm not even going to be humble about it.
That you weren't.
Oh.
I love the confidence. That's pretty good, but I have some good hand-eye coordination. I don't know about you, but I feel like I could give Danielle a run for her money.
Out of all the things that I was not good at in sports, possibly hitting a baseball was the worst I was at. I would swing so hard that I would fall over. You know, I would lose my balance because I would always was trying to hit the fence. If I did make contact, which was rare, I could hit the ball a long way. It was just hitting the ball a long way. So baseball, out of all the sports, baseball was not my game, unfortunately. Although I look back at it now, being left-handed, I probably should have concentrated on pitching and become a left-handed pitcher, because that's where the money is, young ladies. That's where the money is. Left-handed pitching, especially a starter.
Love it. And finally, Art, this last question. Well, we have one more question after this, but Art, what happens
All right.
if we wear red underwear and the Wings still lose the lottery? Interesting.
What happens if? Well, then you didn't have enough red underwear. You didn't wear it for long enough. You know, what you're going to have to do, because let's be honest. I mean, and I take Steve Yzerman at his word. The Red Wings are going to need a couple of drafts to get this all together. So that means next year we're going to find ourselves in the same position. So what I want everyone to do is go out. I thought that maybe this red underwear bit would be good for maybe a show or two. I can't believe the traction I've gotten out of this thing. It's amazing. I know the crew can't wait till this is all over. It's like, just shut up about the underwear already. But I will say this. Then the problem is you didn't do it correctly. You don't have enough red underwear. Go out and get it. Wear it. Leading up to the draft, the month before the draft, at least have 30 pairs or 7, and then wash them. At least 7 pairs of red underwear, and lead that up. No, 30 pairs would be kind of, I don't even think I own 30 pairs of underwear. Maybe I do. Who knows? I know I'm not even going to ask you, I don't even want to go down that road with you two, but I will say this. You didn't have enough red underwear. You just didn't have enough. Okay. Shame on you. I've done everything I've mentioned red underwear almost every segment since first time I mentioned it, but that's what I would say. You didn't do it right. Get more and wear it.
All right. So quantity over quality is key. Okay. We have one more question, and this one's for both of you. What number would you be if you were drafted by the Tigers, and why? That and why is important. Daniela, we'll start with you.
This is like jersey number, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I would definitely be number 12. And that is because that was my number. I played soccer growing up. I always wore number 12. I think I was handed a jersey the first team I was ever on at 5-6 years old. They didn't really let you pick your number, and it was number 12. And I said, okay, I guess I'm number 12. And it worked out. I mean, there's athletes like Tom Brady that are number 12. So it worked.
Lucky number 12. Okay. Art, what about you?
Well, when I was in 4th grade, my 4th grade teacher, Mr. Kasiba, decided that, real personable guy, instead of calling us by our names or every assignment we had to do, he assigned us a number. So we always had to put your number. What your number was that he assigned at the beginning of the school year was your number. I remember my number was 24. So I've always kind of fancied that number, 24, or I would do 27. Because if you add 2 and 9, that's number 9, which I could never wear Gordie Howe's number, but 27, which adds up to 9 when you add them up together, 2 and 7 is 9. I would do that. So it'd either be 24 for Mr. Kasiba or 27 because it adds up to 9. I know I'm a weird dude, man. I'll be the first to admit it, but those would be the numbers.
There are so many different ways to add up to 9, though. Why 2 and 7?
Well, okay. If you really want to know, when I became a young Michigan football fan, their quarterback was a guy named Don Moorhead. And I mean, I can barely remember this. I was young. His number was 27.
Got it. Okay.
Always goes
My number
back
would be
to
3.
It
My
does.
number
All
would be
roads
3.
lead
I was
back to
born
Ann
on the
Arbor.
3rd. Don't you guys want to hear what number I would be?
Yes, sorry, Carly. I do.
Yeah. Hey, not after this bet you didn't know. I think we're a little bit peeved at you.
They gave me my own screen for a second so I can tell you guys what number I would be. Okay, I would be number 3. I was born in the 3rd month of the year and the 3rd child. I was born in 93. I've just always liked the number 3. So there it is. I would be number 3.
That was a wonderful story, Carly.
Thank you. I finally got it out.
I was born on my number, I guess, on my birthday would be 5. So, it's Nick's number. So I guess that wouldn't be bad. Or birth date or birth month would be 11. Is Zadina 11 right now? That might not be bad either.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Love it. You guys, that's all I have for you guys today. That was a fun segment. I enjoyed that.
It was. Thank you, Carly. And I love that you would be number 3. I don't think I'll ever forget that. So thank you. And a big thank you to our friends at AAA for presenting Let's Socialize. AAA says thank you with free roadside assistance for first responders and healthcare workers fighting to defeat COVID-19. You protect us by going to work every day. Let AAA protect you on the way there and back. Guys, it's 2:00. I can't believe that we come to the end of the show so fast every single week.
Already?
As always. I know, right?
Yeah. Well, let's go longer. I know the crews really want. Let's go till 6 tonight.
Oh, geez, I'm getting something in my ear that's like, cut Art off the screen right now. Don't talk.
I'm sure you are.
Well, Art, we're really excited, as you can tell, to have baseball back as of next week. Spring training starts. But for the time being, Fox Sports Detroit is still going to give us some classic games, which have been so fun to watch throughout this time without baseball. Tonight, we're going to have 2006 ALDS Game 2, and the rest of the weekend, we'll get to watch the rest of the series. So, Art, enjoy your classic games, because really soon we're going to have live games.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the classic games because you're right. They're going to be replaced by live games. Live baseball is going to be great. And then tomorrow night, of course, we've got our big draft show where supposedly, and we keep running out of time, but hopefully the captain's going to be on, Steve Yzerman, addressing as he talks about the Red Wings' luck of getting the number 1 pick, hopefully.
That's right, Art. You guys, that's tomorrow night, right after the draft lottery at 8:30. You can join Art, Ken, Kale, and Carly. They'll take you through every pick that we can go through, and hopefully we get that number 1 pick, so we'll have some good news and we can hear from Steve Yzerman. So tomorrow, 8:30, I know where all of you will be. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and you can catch us next Tuesday at noon.